part of the discussion, you know, you can look at electronic cigarettes in isolation and say there may be some risks associated with those products on their own. But the reality is the context in which we're working. And for colleagues here living and working in a Wales where smoking is still the largest preventable cause of ill health and death, and where you still have children starting smoking on a regular basis, the public health priority, and for Cancer Research UK, the cancer prevention priority, is to eliminate tobacco smoking in the longer term from society. So to see e-cigarettes and get too concerned about the product in isolation misses the point entirely. The point is the risks need to be compared with the risks of tobacco. And there we're very clear about the scale of the risk. And where there is an alternative, and e-cigarettes are an alternative, we should be supporting their use where appropriate, while also protecting children. That's the balance you have to strike. It really is.
Kirsty?
This is the area I'd like to come on to. You're quite clear in paragraph 4 of your evidence that in your belief, Cancer Research UK, that the bill as currently drafted will not improve public health in Wales. And I would like to explore with you the opportunities that you believe that electronic cigarette products do offer for improving public health. Because if the basis of the legislation is about improving public health, could you explain to us in your research and your knowledge of these products, what is the potential for e-cigarettes properly regulated so that people know what they're buying and there's consistency and they're as good as they can be? What is the potential, do you think, for this product to drive down levels of traditional tobacco use?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so the evidence at the moment, and you'll hear from Peter Hayek next, is their real potential is as a cessation aid. That's what we would like to see. We'd like to see more people stop smoking, and we'd like e-cigarettes to have a place in that. And there are places that they're roughly as effective as nicotine replacement therapy at the moment, but they're not as effective as your stop smoking services. So they're somewhere in the middle. So we know that using an e-cigarette is about 60% more effective in a stop smoking attempt than willpower alone, which is how most smokers try and quit, or buying nicotine replacement therapy over the counter. So they're another bit of the armory, if you will, in helping people move away from tobacco. But their key element of success is their appeal. It's the number of people that are using them. So they're mid-range success, and they will get better, I think, as technology develops. But it's their reach that is the promise. And so I think that the real potential is to encourage more people to try to stop smoking potentially with them.
I mean, I would add to that to say that cigarettes are lethal, and they are already well established in the market. And we've known how harmful cigarettes are since the early 1950s, and it's been widespread public knowledge since the early 60s. And yet still 20% roughly of adults smoke. And half of those 20% will die prematurely, losing 10 years of life because of their smoking. Electronic cigarettes offer a potential substitute for that smoking. And although Linda has referred to their use primarily as cessation aids, I think what she means by that, or what she regards, is anyone who switches from tobacco cigarettes has quit smoking, even if they end up using an electronic cigarette for the rest of their life. Now, if we could move all of our smokers onto electronic cigarettes permanently, you would save, so certainly across the UK, and I can't give you a figure for Wales, but across the UK, maybe 5 million premature deaths. This is a massive public health opportunity. And any mixed message that says we should be very cautious about these products, is missing the point, missing a golden opportunity to improve public health now.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, can I ask clarification? I think it's important because looking at the aim of the bill, and actually it is about denormalisation and not banning the product, but denormalisation, and therefore that's the concept of the banning public places. And Professor Bauld, you actually did mention, in fact, that in one of the responses that it appears that they are a replacement for cigarettes. The behaviour is the same. Yeah. Is there an issue, therefore, that we are not denormalising the process and behaviour of smoking? With e-cigarettes doesn't actually stop that denormalisation. We are actually saying it's the same,
I think-
behaviour-wise?
I agree that there is definitely a similar behaviour, but we really have to stick to the evidence, and the evidence is very consistent. We've been looking at this since 2010, 2011 now, that, you know, if we had seen any stall in decline in smoking rates, I would be concerned. And just like Ash Wales, we will keep a very careful eye on this. But tobacco smoking prevalence is continuing to decline, and arguably in England it's declining at a faster rate than it has for many years. So I don't think that there's any evidence about the gesture or the e-cigarettes renormalising smoking. I'm just not seeing that evidence to date.
I agree. I think, and historically we've talked about the need to denormalise smoking in the importance of ending smoking. If we can end smoking or help to end smoking by normalising electronic cigarette use, we will be achieving something. So I think it's important to keep that distinction.
Can I just add, you asked about dual use. You had a series of questions about dual use. I think it's really important to understand about dual use, because I absolutely share your concerns, and the public does as well. Why are people using these devices and they're continuing to smoke? We know that people engage in compensatory smoking when they cut down, so they might not be benefiting their health by just doing that. There's a couple of things to say there. John and I both were members of the NICE Tobacco Harm Reduction Guidance Group. And we looked at the studies where people use nicotine replacement therapy when they cut down their smoking. And we advocated doing that in the guidance, NRT, and continuing to smoke for a period, because what you see in the data is those people who engage in that dual use don't take in as much toxins from the cigarette because they're getting the nicotine they need, and also they actually end up stopping. They may take a year, potentially, until they get to the quitting point, but they're more likely to stop. And what we're seeing with dual use of e-cigarettes, I think, in the population, and the data will come through, is people actually take quite a long time in the quitting journey. They dual use the e-cigarette and the tobacco for quite some time, but then eventually most of them will move away from tobacco completely. And if you look at the prevalence figures in England, that's what's happening. The proportion of dual users as a group of the e-cigarette using population is declining. And that's because more people are eventually getting away from tobacco, but it does take a bit of time. So I think that's the picture.
I'll just clarify that point, and just from my own mind.
Yeah.
Is the portion declining because more people are there stopping full stop,
Yeah.
or they're returning to smoking?
No, they're stopping full stop. That's what we're seeing in the figures, and that's the data there is the Ash YouGov survey.
If you dual use, you're roughly twice as likely to quit smoking than if you don't dual use. And I've always found the dual use argument against electronic cigarettes a little strange, given that NRT, nicotine replacement therapy, is actually licensed for dual use. It's an accepted good use of a drug. Electronic cigarettes are, as if currently, the early generation devices are similar to the Nicorette inhalator in terms of nicotine delivery. It's the same thing in effect, and yet it seems bizarre that we would say it's okay to dual use with one nicotine product, but it's not okay to dual use with another. The more people who dual use, the better. There's a precedent for this in Sweden, where the introduction of smokeless tobacco, which incidentally was prohibited in the UK, and I was one of the voices that spoke up for that in the early 90s, because it would appeal to children, it would draw a whole new generation of young people into tobacco use who weren't otherwise going to become smokers, and it would help to renormalise the process of tobacco use. We banned these products and the Swedes kept them. Sweden now has a smoking prevalence that is almost half the next lowest smoking prevalence country in the European Union, which happens to be its neighbour, Finland, which also uses oral tobacco. What they've seen over decades is a slow transfer, as Linda has described, from people who predominantly smoke to becoming predominant smokers who occasionally use oral tobacco, to becoming predominant oral tobacco users who occasionally smoke, to becoming oral tobacco users, and then either continuing with that for the rest of their life or quitting completely. And the further they go down that pathway, so the further the risk of lung cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and cardiovascular disease falls, and that is why Sweden has the lowest lung cancer rates in Europe.